Everyone, and welcome to Algo Explained. Today we're going to be going over the Fibonacci sequence and how we are supposed to write it in Python. Um, so what exactly is the Fibonacci sequence? The Fibonacci sequence is basically a series of numbers that starts off with 0 and 1, where the last two integers are the new sum. Uh, when you say it like that, it sounds kind of confusing, to be honest with you. The best form for me to understand it, and I think for many other people, is just to write it in math. The mathematical form basically it's shown where it says, um, here, I'm just going to let it keep writing. So it says 0 plus 1 equals to 1, 1 plus 1 equals to 2, 2 plus 1 equals to 3, 3 plus 2 equals to 5. Hopefully you see a pattern here. You see how the first, so it starts off with 0 and 1. It always has to start off with 0 and 1 in order for it to be the sequence, right? Starts off with 0 and 1. The first number becomes the first number becomes the second number in the equation right here. This is going to become the second equation in our next equation, right? Second number in our equation in the next equation. That's confusing. And then our sum, right? 1 plus 1 right here, our second number and our sum in the next equation. 1 plus 1 equals to 2. 2 plus 1 equals to 3. 3 plus 2 equals to 5. 5 plus 3 equals to 8. You see how it goes on and on and on, right? It'll go on forever if it has to infinity. But you see over here, it almost looks like coding itself, right? Just in the math form right here. It looks like a loop. It goes on. It's just like updating the variables, right? The first number becomes the second number. The second number becomes the sum over and over and over again in a loop. And then the first seven integers of the sequence 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55. We just have this here so that we can check if our code really works, if it really prints out what we need it to print out, right? Um, so the Fibonacci sequence, right? Oh, it's just like numbers, right? But what is it really used for? Like, why is it important? Um, so the Fibonacci sequence is a humongous part in statistics, CS, and nature. It is also the reason we're doing this video as the first video on our channel is because the Fibonacci sequence is an algorithm that most coders write at the beginning of their coding career, right? It gets people like involved with how to use loops and how to like update your variables, which happens a lot in coding. In writing algorithms, you have to update your variables, and many people struggle with it. But the Fibonacci sequence, if you write it as a beginner program, your tutorial, then you'll be able to get these things like easily because you already written this program. So now that we know everything about it, how should we code it? Um, so it states above that we should start off with a 0 and 1. So obviously we need to make a 0 and a 1 variable outside of a loop, right? We need to then make a loop where it has our equation. You can see here how our equation is right here, right? So we need an equation that will basically say our number 1 plus our number 2 equals our sum. But then after we do that, it's just going to be looping and looping, right? But after we do that, we need to update our variables. We need it so that our number 1 becomes our number 2 in our last equation, and our number 2 becomes our sum from the last equation. It's all dependent on the last equation. That's why the loop is needed, right? So let's code it now. Uh, I'm just going to call it num1. Our number 1 is going to equal to 0. Our number 2 is going to equal to 1. Um, I'm gonna, even though this is not needed, I'm gonna make an iteration input, how many times we want it to iterate, and how many times we want it to like make the sequence, right? So, int, int. This is how many times we're gonna have it iterating. It has to be an integer, or else it won't work, right? And then we want to keep a count variable. This will basically say, um, this will be used in the while loop to see how many times we should iterate, right? It's going to equal to 0 for now, but we're going to keep updating it in the while loop. So while our count is smaller than the iterations that our user wants, so iter, we want to write our equation. So it's going to be what? It's going to be sum equals to num1 plus num2. So sum equals to num1 plus num2. Again, we see sum equals to num1 plus num2 quite how we see our first equation right here, right? So in the first iteration of our code right here, it's going to do 0 plus 1. So our sum is going to be 0 plus 1 equals to 1. That looks familiar, doesn't it? Right here. So now that we've written basically all of our code, now what we need to do is we need to keep updating our variables, because what this is going to do is this is just going to keep printing 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1, because our variables are now being updated, right? So um, what did I say here? Do you remember how every iteration of our mathematical loop right here, our number 2 becomes our number 1 and our sum equals to our number 2? Um, so we just have to write that in code form. So num1 equals to num2. So it's basically here, it's taking our number 2 from our last equation, making it our number 1, right? And then it's putting, and then our number 2. Our number 2 is going to equal to our sum. Quite how we want it to right here, right? It's taking the number 1 right here. I don't know what's going on here. It's taking the number 1 here, right? It's making it the first number, and then it's taking our sum, making it the second number. Again, we see it again here. First sum, that's basically the sum of our last equation and the first number, and then that's 2, and 2 plus 1 3, and then it's gonna keep on going forever and ever. So that's what we're doing here. And then in order to make sure that our count versus iter works, we want our count to update, right? So we need to keep adding 1 every time this loop iterates, every single time. So we can do that by this, which basically just means that count equals to count plus 1. So right now our count is 0, but after it goes through the loop, it's going to become 1. So now that we've written all of our code, we still don't have an output because we didn't print anything, right? So our automatic instinct is to print our sum, but that makes no sense, because why would we print the sum of this when we needed to actually equal the 0 1 1 2? Right now, if we print the sum, then we're only going to get the 1. We're going to get 1 2 3 5 8 13 21 34 55. But uh, we actually need our 0 and 1 for the sequence to work. So how are we going to do this? In order to print those numbers, we're going to actually have to print our number 1, because remember, our number 1 is the 0, right? Sorry, print our number 1 is the 0, right? So let's go through it manually, right? So our num1 is 0 1. Let's say the iteration is 5. That doesn't really matter. Count equals to 0. Okay, so we're going here, right? While count is less than iteration, iteration is 5, count is 0, obviously it is. It's going to go into the loop, right? Print num1. What is our number 1 right now? We haven't gone through the loop yet. We haven't updated our variables. We haven't gone through the equation. Our number 1 right now is 0, right? 0. So our sum is equal, so it's going to print 0 first, right? And then it's going to go through the equation now. Sum equals to 0 plus our number 2, 1, right? Our sum is 1, okay? It's going to go down here, right? Now we're saving 1 in our sum variable, right? Now we're updating our number 1 so that it can keep on going. So our number 1 now is number 2, and our number 2 was 1 right here, right? Number 2 right here. So our number 1 is 1. Our number 2 is our sum, which is also 1. So 1 plus 1 equals to 2. And then we keep on doing it over and over and over and over again, right? Until our count is no longer less than the iterations. So now let's try it out, right? Let's say we want okay, so we want to check this, right? So how many is this? This is 6 9. It's about like 10. So we'll just do 11. So here we can see how it's printed out. 0 1 1 2 3 5 8 13 21 34 55. Looks familiar? Yes, it does, right here. These are the first 7 integers of the sequence. That is how you write the Fibonacci sequence in Python. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed